Folks, welcome to So Bad It's Good. This is a special edition of So Bad It's Good because we are going to talk about the one, the only Mr. Jax Taylor. Because tonight, Tuesday night, we got some information. It was sent to me man, this got sent to me so much. There was a TMZ alert earlier that said Taylor seeking inpatient treatment for mental health. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. I do want to throw out there as well is that mental health is something that is so important to me and hopefully to you. And hopefully we can talk about this respectfully. And of course, throw in our little comments or my little comments, because I think a lot of people saw this and their minds went in 30 different directions, if this was real or not. But I think when you deal with mental health, especially if you are checking yourself into an inpatient facility, that really kind of it strikes a very serious chord. So you have to take it seriously. That's not something that we can completely, joke about or write off. And we should take that as seriously as possible, even if it is Jax Taylor. And we can talk about Jax's past and what potentially led up to this, but we will try to take it as serious as possible and try to read it at face value and go from there. So I was going to put this in the we just had an episode come out with Olivia Marie Plath from Welcome to Plathville, but I didn't want to start the episode talking about Jax's mental health. So I made that a separate episode. And so we'll talk a little bit about that here and then potentially move on to Alex Cooper from Call Her Daddy, because we were talking about her doing Olympics coverage for Peacock and NBC Universal. And there seems to be so many differing opinions on Alex Cooper. So we'll talk a little bit about that because a lot of people have such strong opinions about her. And I'm not really that familiar with Call Her Daddy or Daddy Gang, except to point out she is one of the most successful podcasters that's ever existed. I mean, nobody, no matter what jokes are thrown her way, no matter what I say, nobody can take that away from her. That's a very real thing. And she's about to sign $100 million contract, I think, with Sirius, because her contract is coming up, her 3-year contract with Spotify. And I think that's about to be signed. And I think the NBC Universal and her doing Olympics coverage just shows how powerful she has become. So we'll talk a little bit about that later, hopefully. But let's get into the Jax Taylor of it all. And this is when your brand is really strong. And I'm joking when I say that, but I got sent this TMZ story about 60 times within the span of 10 minutes. And at first I wasn't going to say anything about it because, I've had this head cold and I don't know. I just wasn't, I'm dealing with my own shit. And sometimes you're like, oh God, another reality show thing. These kids can't seem to get it together. So I was like, but then it kept getting sent to me and I was reading it and then I was going over how I feel about things and how much reality show I've watched that made my brain mush and how we think about things in terms of storyline and production and filming. And this is what I wrote in my Instagram post. I said, I hope Jax gets the help he needs and that in no way is this a storyline for the Valley. He deserves to have his therapy and mental health journey off camera. And in the caption, I wrote, I've been sent this Jax story a bunch. Hope this is more than a storyline. He's obviously going through a lot. I know they started filming a couple of weeks ago, so I hope the production gives him time to figure out his mental health. If this is all true, it could be a really positive move for him long term. Now, a lot of people in the comments immediately were like, oh, narcissist, it's for attention. It's a storyline. How could it not be a storyline? But let's just go through the TMZ article before we get into any kind of personal feelings. So TMZ reported this at 4:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It says Jax Taylor is taking time for himself and seeking inpatient treatment for mental health struggles. This amid his ongoing split from his wife, Brittany Cartwright, TMZ has learned. A rep for the Valley star and Vanderpump Rules alum tells us, quote, Jax has always been candid about his mental health struggles, especially during the past few months on his podcast. They add, he has made the decision to seek inpatient treatment. This is a particularly sensitive time for him and his family. They ask for privacy and respect until he is ready to speak more on this matter. Mind you, this might not be all that surprising, TMZ says. On Monday, Jax posted a picture on his IG story with a caption that read, healing. The post also showed two books, one titled Get Out of Your Mind and Into Your Life, and the other was Set Boundaries, Find Peace. Of course, we all know Jax is currently going through a very public separation with Brittany. The two have been together romantically for nearly a decade, and lately things have been a bit rocky between them. As we reported, the couple began living separately from each other, with Brittany living outside their marital home. Our sources told us at the time Jax Taylor and Brittany Cartwright are still taking time apart after fighting a lot over the past year, which ultimately ended with them separating. Our camera guy recently got Jax at LAX. Okay. Hey, Jax. What's going on with your mental health? Okay. What's going on there? Sorry, that's my TMZ reporter. Um, and he told us with everything going on in his life right now, the only thing occupying his mind is his family because he hasn't seen them for weeks due to work events. That might be what's at play here with his treatment. Bravo's The Valley is in the middle of filming season 2 right now, so it's safe to say this storyline will play out on the show when it's back on air. So this is the TMZ report. Now, we know that The Valley started filming 2 weeks ago, right? So it started filming 2 weeks ago, and my initial thought was, oh God, this is a storyline. It's got to be. I mean, you can already see it just teed up as a storyline. Because there's so many thoughts that go into this. First off, Jax Taylor. So looking at Jax as a character, and we have now had him in our lives since 2013, right? 2013. So 2013, we met him on Vanderpump Rules season 1, episode 1, right? He was with Stassi, and I'm covering the first season right now. I've been recapping it over on the Patreon. We're about to hit the third episode this week, and I just watched the third episode today. And that was 2013. And even then, Jax was jaxing. I mean, in that first season, we grew to know that he likes to embellish things. He will sometimes flat out lie. It seems like he lived his life by a different code of ethics. There was just a lot going on. And we've seen that season after season in terms of his behavior on the show. And he's also spoke about mental health in so many ways. On his last season of the show, I remember those conversations with Ariana, where Ariana was like, yeah, man, you need to go get help. You need to go get therapy. And that was when, he was like, listen, something's wrong with me. I have like a sprained brain, something, like my brain is sprained. And at the time, I knew Jax was a big fan of watching anything on Netflix. And that was when Kanye West had done the interview with David Letterman on Netflix. And Kanye West talked about his brain being sprained. And I was like, oh my God, is Jax just taking something he heard from Kanye West and using it as his own story? Now, not to say that Jax doesn't have issues, because even then we all knew he had issues. And listen, we only get to see a small portion of their lives, and that is heavily edited, right? But we saw him fail again and again, and we all make mistakes, right? But we saw him fail again and again, lie again and again, abuse relationships again and again. But at the same time, there was something that made him so, and I think you see it on The Valley too, he is so immensely watchable. And even on this show, we talk about that of you almost just have to accept that this man is reality show gold, because there's a level of him being a hypocrite and him knowing how the world is supposed to be and how you're supposed to behave, and how hard he was coming down on Brittany of like, oh, my wife just drinking all the time, not being a real wife, not being a real woman. And we're like, what the fuck, Jax? What are you doing? But it was classic Jax. But it made for good reality television. And it's something that you almost have to face with yourself, kind of accepting that people's personal pain makes for good reality television. And people sometimes acting like a pompous ass makes for good reality television. And what I said last season, especially on Vanderpump Rules with the scandal, I said, this would all be fine and dandy if we weren't all making them rich in the process. We're all making them very wealthy individuals. And in a lot of ways, they have so much, they get rewarded for screwing up royally. When we all screw up in our own lives, we don't get nearly the kind of rewards that people on reality television get. And yes, most of the harm on reality television come from men and our boneheaded way of moving and thinking about the world. Um, we also know that Jax Taylor dealt with the loss of his dad, which he brought up a lot. He probably still brings up. I think he mentioned it in The Valley. We know that he doesn't talk to his mother, and that had to that had something to do with his dad passing away and how his mom handled it, but still to this day has not made up with his mom. And, I know he takes being a dad very seriously. I know he is so proud of his son. But then we saw the Jackson Brittany relationship, which once again, I want to remind you that we can be wrong sometimes. Even in the Jackson Brittany stuff, I think there was a part of me just because of reality television and how it works. I thought, man, there's no way that this relationship just completely fell apart when they were filming this show. There's just no way. But it turns out it really did. And in some ways, you go on reality television, these people go on reality television knowing that their life isn't going like swimmingly in their personal relationships, and it's almost like the show does its thing and will almost help you get out of a relationship or show you that you need to get out of a relationship or potentially heal a relationship. And it's not just with Jackson Brittany. We saw it with the Lallies on the Valley as well. They're obviously, out of their relationship and on to new greener pastures. They both seem so much happier. But it was just like, wow, there's no way. But it turned out there was a lot of truth to that relationship not going well. Now, throughout this whole period of time, they continued doing their Jackson Brittany podcast, right? And sometimes they would just do it separately. Sometimes they would do it together. It was very weird. They have, obviously Jax's Saloon that is probably doing more business than it ever has because of the Valley. And they're always there in some fashion. I mean, Brittany's always there or Jax is always there. So their lives are heavily entwined also because obviously their son. But I think, Brittany, and especially watching that final episode of The Valley, so in I was so shocked and weirdly proud of Brittany to be able to express herself in a certain way towards Jax of like, Jax, you ain't going to make no therapist appointment. You just called him yesterday because you knew we were filming today. And it was like, Brittany was dead on right. You know that. You know he did it to look a certain way on camera. And then it was followed up by Jax Taylor's talking head where he was like, listen, it's really it's a long drive to get to therapy. Yeah, I can't. It's such a long drive. It's LA traffic, and you're like, dude, darkness. And so they had picked back up cameras for that, right? And then cameras went down, and that was like the end of the season. And they started filming, like I said, 2 weeks ago. But in that interim, it's been a couple of months, right? And I have to imagine, like, remember, Brittany has said, Jax refused to move out. So Brittany and their son got a Airbnb or a place to live that she rented out and seemed to like go on with her life. Like it always shocks me how much strength like it takes because Brittany was out there, like that's the weird thing when your life is falling apart. Also, your business and the business being yourself is going bananas. All of a sudden, the phone is ringing, except for Jenny Craig with Brittany and cameos. It probably wasn't ringing a lot. And then you have a successful show, The Valley, which is based off of the success of Scandal. The Valley would not have gone unless Scandal happened, period. Like this show had been kicking around as an idea for years. And I think they finally, the ratings were so strong on Scandival, they finally said, yeah, Alex Baskin, let's see the Valley. Let's see if this works. And us as an audience, for the majority, we were all against it. Oh, who wants to watch this shit? Oh, who asked for this? And I think I was one of the only people, there was more than just me. They were like, no, let's wait and see it. Let's wait and see. And it turned out to be really good. It turned out to be really dark. I think what they were trying to show or what they might have thought, I still am so confused because I thought Jax would realize that his life was not at a place where it should be on camera. And it confuses me with reality television in general to this day is why do this if you are going through this kind of turmoil in your life? Because it can only make it worse. It can only make it worse. And the show was a success. It got a second season pickup. And all of a sudden, Jax Taylor's phone was ringing again. Brittany's phone was ringing. Dodie's phone was ringing. It created new characters that people were curious about, like Janet and the Lallies and Zach. And I mean, it was a great cast all the way around. And with that success, it's not just like, financially appealing. Like, they're starting to make money again. But with that comes all sorts of discourse around it. People like me talk about it, Reddit threads talk about it. You're open to hate comments everywhere. So, whereas Jax was getting probably hate comments towards the end of his run on Vanderpump Rules because he was highly obnoxious in certain ways. And especially, I remember and how he was talking about Ariana that really infuriated me and making fun of her sexuality and her mental health. And I always find it weird when people make fun of mental health, especially dealing with mental health issues themselves. And you do also have to factor in that Jax is like a guy's guy, he's a man's man. And sometimes, like the Iron John aspect of men makes us think that we do not need help at all. Listen, even it's not just men. Like I remember my mom to this day, well, not to this day, she's passed, but she was really wary of me going to therapy or needing that. She felt like, oh, that's there's a certain time and where that wasn't normal for people. That's really abnormal. And I think what's so great about the year that we live in is that we normalize this. That we're not just working out our bodies, that a lot of people are working out our minds because our minds are just so messed up. It is so hard to live in this world. And even if you have everything going in your favor, which Jax does, it doesn't mean that your mind, some people's mind, they're able to get up and they're able to go about their day and be happy, and they don't have, their mind just allows them to move through the world in a very different way. I've always been really honest that my mind doesn't do that. It takes me a while. Like I wake up and sometimes the negative thoughts are immediately there. I mean, sometimes I will be laid out on my back, kind of just, whoa, whoa. And I realize how ridiculous that is. And talking it out loud, it sometimes seems funny because you're like, what the fuck do I have to worry about? But it doesn't take away those feelings. It doesn't take away the way your mind works. And that's why getting on the right medication, which I just switched my antidepressants about a month and a half ago because I was getting to a really low spot. And we're kind of in the process of seeing how that's affecting things or helping things or not helping things. But on top of that, you have to do therapy as well. And believe me, I've been through so many therapists, and therapists are it's really hard because it's hard enough to go through your day, right? And then you have to like throw on, oh, I have to go to the gym or I have to work out, but then I also have to spend an hour talking to a relative stranger about all of the things that you're scared of in life or the bad parts of you, and seeing how to try to behave as a normal human being. I mean, that's a lot to ask of anybody. I mean, you guys out there watching or listening probably have gone through this journey yourself, and it's not like it gets easier. The older you get, the more life can weigh down on you. So now and I know this might sound silly to some, but now let's take all of that into account and think about Jax Taylor of being on Vanderpump Rules for so long, having some of his worst moments, being caught in some of the worst lies, having that all out there for the world, right? We've all made fun of him. Jax Taylor is the reality show character that has sailed a thousand memes. Like I've made like 1,000 Jax memes over my time in this bizarre corner of the world. And, because I just thought, man, what an interesting character. And I think there are parts, there are parts where you're like, okay, I can understand that behavior, or, oh, I've been at that place. But it never seemed like he was taking a long enough or hard enough look at himself to see where this behavior comes from. And I think a lot of things were going his way, even in the course of all of this insanity, where I don't know if he really had the impetus to actually work on himself. And I think some of us are, we go through life of like, okay, you're supposed to get married, you're supposed to have a family, but with reality stars, I always talk about, there's no real handbook. Reality stars shouldn't still be having a career this long into doing a reality show. I mean, the Kardashians still have a career, but like they're like billionaires at this point. The Bachelor and Bachelorette contestants. I mean, think about the contestants on the first season of The Bachelor and where they're all now. And if you remember any of them besides Trista. Trista. I even got her name wrong. So there's no handbook for how to continue to make money as a reality star. You add up all of these people's perceptions of you. You throw on a separation, which is potentially going to lead to a divorce. You also have the pressure of a show that's actually starting to actually become a hit you're also dealing with the fact that you are part of like a gruesome twosome or a troublesome threesome like Jax Sandoval or Jack Sandoval and Schwartz. And you can continue to make money off of that, but maybe also people kind of laugh at you behind the scenes, or they think some of your behavior is so crazy that you're more of a character than a real person anymore. And especially you get reminded of how people feel about you when all of this separation stuff happens. Now, this is just me trying to be as empathetic as I possibly can. But imagine if you are getting separated from your wife or your husband or your loved what and all of a sudden you see all this discourse going, "You go, girl, get the fuck away from him. Thank God you finally woke up." I mean, just every fuck. He's still cheating on you. He never stopped cheating on you. Imagine that. Now, I don't know, and I have nobody to tell me that he pays attention to any of that stuff, but it's out there. It's out there. And you've potentially lied so much in your past about certain things that people really don't trust what you have to say, anyways. So add that on top of all of that as well. You know you need therapy, but you refuse to get it. And I also want to talk about that last season of Vanderpump Rules when Randall Emmett, Lala's ex, at the reunion, Lala said, "Well, what happened to the therapy, Jax?" Randall said he would pay for you, and you still refused to go. You didn't go to the therapy that he had set up. So it's just like he refused. So you have all of this time in between season one and season two. And it looks like he was doing a lot of paid appearances, some by himself, some with Schwartz and Sandoval. I think he was doing that as like up to like a week and a half ago, right? Doing all of these paid appearances, going everywhere, trying to make money, keeping the podcast going, keeping the bar going. And now season two is coming up. And also, it looks like Brittany, in a lot of ways, is starting to move on with her life, is starting to realize I'm a beautiful woman. I've got this, I'm really likable. I mean, every one of Brittany's friends says what an angel she is. Kristen Doty says she's an angel. Everybody says this woman is an angel. And I think Brittany is able to look at life a lot differently than Jax is. So you add all of this stuff up, and in a sense, even Jack said at the one of the last episodes of The Valley says, "Oh, we don't even divorce. We don't even speak about it in our family. It would never happen. Never happen." But what if you start realizing that maybe it can happen? Maybe this person that has always been so gung ho for me is now not as gung ho for me because I am not going to make the appropriate changes in my life. I was just talking to Olivia Marie Plath from Welcome to Plathville, and we were talking about her and Ethan's divorce. And Ethan was never going to be able to make the changes she was going to be able to need to be able to love, to be able to be loved the way that she deserved to be loved. I know this is all kind of like a little too in depth and probably not as tawdry or expose or as gotcha kind of a pod as you might be hoping for, but I'm trying to really walk you through what this all potentially is. So, Brittany is potentially moving on. People have hinted that she's potentially dating. You see her in all of these photos out with guys, a lot of bachelor contestants, like people are hanging out at Jax's saloon. And, you know, before you come down on Brittany, which I don't think anybody would, just remember, Jax has so many dating rumors for the last 80 years of his life. Most recently being with that, what's that girl? The Taylor, I don't know, the dudes in the DM girl that he was spotted with, that he says nothing was going on there. But then some other people were saying that, you know, like I think there was somebody that had posted their text exchange with Jax, sending photos to each other. Who knows how real any of that is? But it's believable in some sense, just because you know the pattern of behavior from Jax in the past. So imagine you're going with your foot on the gas. You've not been nearly as busy as you have been. You're doing all these appearances, gearing up for season two. You got the bar, you got the pressure, you got so many people wanting a piece of you, realizing that the person that you are the closest with this last 8, 10 years, and also you're not seeing your son nearly as much, but you don't have that stable footing, or you're not all in the same place at the end of the night. That's got to really mess with your head. Even though I'm sure at times he's like, "Oh my God, it's amazing, you know, not having my wife around me. It's amazing to be able to get fucked up and like flirt with people and do this and do that." But at the same time, I'm sure at the end of the night, or maybe in the middle of the night, or maybe the next day, you wake up with severe anxiety because you realize you still feel empty and you still have that emptiness inside you. And all of the issues are compounding and compounding and compounding. Okay. So this leads us to season two. And normally I would say, well, this reeks of a storyline. And because I take mental health so seriously, I was like, you know what? I think I'm kind of done with seeing mental health as a very severe storyline on reality television because they never truly seem to give it the respect that it's owed. We had Tom Sandoval doing scream work and breath work. Yeah! And Vanderpump, oh, dude, I'm screaming. Ah! Dipping into a cold plunge as Billy Lee looked on to him lovingly. Doing all of these things instead of sitting down with an actual therapist and doing real work. And listen, I am not a fan of Rachel Leviss, but I will say I always give her credit for taking her out of this situation and going for like a 3-month stay at a professional mental health facility. Now, I might not agree with what Rachel is doing now or how she's kind of mining the past, for financial gain, but I guess in a sense, that's what we all do. But she kind of removed her. She really was doing really hard work to try to find out why her behavior is the way it is. So you get to season two of filming, and they are all shooting. We all see all the photos. They had the white party a couple weeks ago. They had Janet's birthday party at Dave and Buster's. You don't see Jax in any of those photos. So where's Jax? We saw him. There was some paparazzi photos of him, I believe, shooting in a yard with Daniel Bucco that I saw the other day, and it looked like there was a little bit of yelling involved. And that might make sense because Jax kind of alluded to Daniel, like, yeah, there's a lot about Daniel you don't know. He's gonna really have to come with the truth this season. So you're like, okay, that's obviously a fight. That's obviously a story right there. But my thought was when I first saw that TMZ article, oh no, they're gonna make this the storyline for Jax is a mental health facility, and then we're going to see him have to admit himself into a facility, and then we're going to have to find people that are agreeing to be filmed. We're going to have to get his old Reiki therapist back in. It's going to be a potential load of bullshit, and it's going to be something in the back of his head going. And this was my initial thought, and this is I feel horrible for this saying, oh man, this will make a great storyline. I got a storyline, and it gives me a little sympathy, a little empathy from people, and like I'm in a really rough spot. Okay, so that's my first thought. And it might have been a lot of your first thoughts as well. But let me also talk about something that's kind of in the back of my head as well. Since the Rachel Leviss stuff happened and all the reality reckoning stuff happened as well, a lot of focus has been put on mental health. A lot of focus. And this isn't 2013 anymore. Bravo can't air what they used to air. The world has changed. And I'm not here to tell you if it's changed for the better or the worse, whatever. But just a lot of things are very different. And a lot of things in how we live life are very different and how we handle things. And I think sometimes we realize the gravity of situations and how we do have to be really careful on how we handle situations. And I think Bravo is learning the hardest lesson of all this year in terms of all of their shows, whether it be an Ultimate Girls Trip where Brandy and Caroline are going after each other. And it seems like Brandy is going through a mental health crisis. If you read any of her tweets, we have Love is Blind going through their mental health struggles with their cast. Obviously, Rachel Leviss, who brought it up with Bethany Frankel in terms of the reality reckoning. And so the heat is on in terms of Bravo. But also, it's not just Bravo as an entity, as a corporation, having to potentially start to really try to handle these things the right way. Remember that Alex Baskin produces this show. Also, producer Jeremiah Smith, he produced Vanderpump Rules. He's been there since season one. He didn't start off as a producer, but he's worked since season one. He has been brought over to the Valley for season two, and he has close relationships with all those core Vanderpump Rules cast members. Now, this is a little dicey because people are like, well, these producers are too close to their subjects. I talk about this all the time. In fact, I think I talked about it with Dakota Wright, one of our guests this week, in terms of Kyle being close to the Beverly Hills producers. But that's just how work is. You get close to the people that you work with. That's just how humanity is. You can't help but open up to these people. And especially, I would imagine, in these situations where you are filming some of the most brutal aspects of your life and you're getting busted for some of the most embarrassing things in your life. You do tend to get close to these people. So, having said all of that, these people, no matter what you or I think about Jax Taylor, they probably really care about Jax Taylor. Jeremiah probably really cares about Jax. Alex Baskin really cares about Jax. There's not just a dollar sign on Jax. They really are potentially concerned about him. So I don't know whether this is true or not. I don't know. um, take everything I say, obviously, with a grain of salt. I'm sure you do already. But what if there was a world in which this production said, listen, dude, we can't film with you unless you do go to inpatient therapy, unless you do take care of yourself, because we're worried. Now, there might have been some big explosion. There might have been some big thing that we will see. Who knows? A lot of people are like, oh, how did he screw up? Is he trying to save his ass from something that just got uncovered? Maybe, maybe not. But also, there's been enough stuff in this last year alone that could really push anybody to their breaking point, even Jax Taylor. And I know that's part of being a narcissist. And I know that he has lied again and again and again. I know all of that stuff. But what if this is real? What if somebody that has refused to look at any of their behavior for so long, things get more dark, more dark, more dark, even though it looks maybe okay to us on the outside? What if? And I think when you deal with mental health, you really have to always keep that door open and say, what if? And so I did hear something that potentially this production will not shoot with him until he takes his mental health seriously. And I don't know if that's true or not. It's just something I heard. But it kind of made me relieved in a lot of ways because I was like, fuck yeah. That means they actually do care about the people that they work with. And actually, it's not just for a storyline. Now, who knows? It still could be for a storyline because I'm sure they would have to explain his absence. But what if this isn't for the show? What if this is just to try to get this dude better because he has completely fallen off? And, like I said, even the TMZ article pointed out all of these things where, oh my God, he was posting these books, get out of your mind and into your life and set boundaries, find peace. And he had this like fun lettering that said healing and pointing to these books, I mean, that's classic Jax. But he also posted this thing, Buddhism quote on his Instagram grid saying, be strong enough to stand alone, smart enough to know when you need help, and brave enough to ask for it. So he posted that on his Instagram story. So who knows? But I would like to believe that this isn't for a storyline. I don't want to believe that he's deep in pain, but I want to believe that this isn't just a trick for reality shows. But I think we've been so inundated, and our love of reality TV shows almost makes us look at everything in life as reality show fodder, as storylines for a show. And so it's totally normal for us to think this way because of what we've seen from these shows in the past. But I'm just kind of saying, what if we maybe leave a little room for this is completely real and that he potentially is going through something really dark and that there are people looking out for him. And the Valley obviously is moving on. They seem like they're shooting. I think they're in Santa Barbara right now shooting something. So that is moving forward. And hopefully, Jax Taylor is getting the help that he needs finally, because I don't know somebody that's needed more therapy than Jax Taylor, maybe besides myself. I mean, like we've seen it since 2013. That dude should be in therapy. So maybe he's finally doing that. And if he does, imagine that he's setting himself up for the rest of his life for such potential success that it really could open up things in such an amazing way. And listen, we'll find out more. We'll probably find out more tomorrow and the next day and the next day, and we'll talk about it all here. But I just wanted to talk. Oh, also, I this got brought up, and God, thank God for the listeners. You guys are amazing. You guys all messaged me. Danny Gossip Girl was the first one, and then I got a bunch of them afterwards that reminded me the Trinity Oracle sisters, Trinity Oracles, the three sisters that are psychics have been on my show a couple times. This last appearance they were on, they did an all Bravo prediction segment, and their prediction, they said Jax Taylor, he is going into some really bad mental health struggles. And me, in a flippantly joking way, was like, well, it doesn't take a psychic to know that. I mean, I could have predicted that. But man, they predicted that as of like a month ago. And I just thought that was really interesting. A lot of people pointed that out as well. You can go back and listen to that audio or watch it on YouTube. But I thought that was kind of eerie. I was like, wow, real. I mean, they also said that Tupac told them in an afterlife for Lala to like stop saying that they were like that, she was like Tupac incarnated. So I don't know. I love those Trinity Oracle sisters. Anyways, Jax Taylor, I hope he is truly getting the help that he needs. Everybody deserves to Everybody deserves happiness in this world, no matter what they've done. I mean, I guess unless you've murdered somebody. So we'll keep you posted, but that is my thoughts on Jax Taylor. Okay, and finally, I wanted to talk about Alex Cooper, who is the host of Call Her Daddy, and she is currently working for NBC Universal on Peacock, and she does these watch along at the Olympics. They have chosen her to do Olympics coverage, and I was watching her on Sunday, and just to be very blatantly, openly honest with you, I don't listen to Call Her Daddy. I see a lot of clips on Instagram. She always has the best guests. And I've read tons of things about her, and me and Sophie were really going in on her. I think, I mean, not that hard, but a little hard because I had just watched her watch along on Sunday, and I was watching her talk with Andy Cohen, and I just thought, wow, this seems really unprepared. And I know they're going for a loose vibe. It's going for fun, and and I do realize she brings in a certain demographic because she is insanely popular. You cannot take that away from her. Like, this is not somebody that's like struggling. This is somebody that NBC Universal particularly reached out to because of her strength and the power and the audience that she can bring anywhere at this point. Sometimes I will get frustrated just watching those clips because I'm like, did she ask this? Did she ask that? It doesn't seem like she really, like it seems like sometimes it'll be more sexual related, which I think that's how Call Her Daddy, when people have been explaining it to me in the past, or I've read certain things, that's how Call Her Daddy kind of initially started with her and Sophia Franklin. And, before they split up during the pandemic and all of that craziness happened. And Sophia has her own podcast, Sophia with an F, and then Alex got Call Her Daddy. And you can't help, I've said this many times, and I don't know Sophia. We were talking about this in the Patreon Live last week, that it's got to be a little bit like Pete Best with the Beatles. I think he was like the drummer that was before Ringo Starr and the Beatles, of like, imagine being forced out of a show, or splitting up a show, and then that show continues and it gets a $60 million deal, or you leave a band and all of a sudden then that band becomes the Beatles. And yes, I do realize that with Pete Best, the Beatles probably wouldn't have been the Beatles. Every little butterfly wing makes something completely different, so on and so on. But it's an insane story because Sophia has, I think, really strong podcast, is still does really, really well, but not in that $60 million for 3 years kind of well. And a lot of people have told me, and this is what's so interesting about it. And listen, I always hate to be ignorant. That's why I try to read and watch and listen to anything that I'm doing an interview for, just because I want to try to be as up on a subject as possible. But this I can't be completely up on because I don't listen to Call Her Daddy. And I've only listened to Sophia with an F a couple of times, with people have recommended me episodes. So I really can't talk about what they're like as podcasters. I can talk about how other people, what they've said about them, but I was just going on what I was watching on Alex Cooper's Sunday Olympic show. And I just thought it was kind of a mess. And I was like, doesn't seem like she really knows the sports. Doesn't seem like, I just was kind of awkward. But I do also have to say something that I thought about later that day and this week. I'm not the target demo for Alex Cooper. I'm an old dude. I mean, her demo is young girls, young women. And I think she probably inspires them and makes them laugh and all of that stuff. So yeah, it probably it isn't geared towards me. But anyways, this post was in my Facebook group, the So Bad It's Good Facebook group, by Sydney, who I love. She's always bringing up interesting points after listening to the show. And she provided some different point of view than what me and Sophie were talking about on Monday. She said, I'm currently listening to today's pod and had to pause to give my 2 cents on the Alex Cooper Olympic covered situation because I have a bit different take on it. First, Alex played D1 soccer at Boston University, and she also dated pro baseball and hockey players. So she's certainly in the sports world to an extent and doesn't have zero knowledge. Now, is she maybe a little underqualified to commentate on the Olympics? Potentially. But looking at it from a broader lens, here's why having her is so important. Now, yeah, I didn't know she played soccer. Didn't fucking know at all. Great to know. Also, dating a pro basketball and hockey players, that's great. Maybe I mean, listen, if she brings up that kind of knowledge during the watch along with the Olympics, I'm here for it. But yeah, I didn't know that stuff. Okay, she says, one, the type of show with Alex who is keeping it light, having fun with it, not overly analytical on the sports side, is perfect for people who don't have a vested interest or knowledge in sports. They can follow along with the Olympics without it being boring or being a segment that they don't overly understand. They didn't hire Alex Cooper for her vast knowledge in sports. They hired her to bring in a new audience to the Olympics, which is what I just said. And yes, you're right. That is right. That's what she's there to do. So hopefully that's probably happening for her. Now, like I said, not being the target audience, I'm not insanely vested in sports, but I'm vested in enough to be like, when you're watching something, no matter how old or young you are, I kind of want there to be a moment of, damn, this person really knows their stuff. I mean, really funny, but at the same time, that's a great point. And by the way, this is just me watching one episode of something that's probably daily. So it's probably a learning curve. And by today, which is Thursday, wait, no, today's Wednesday, probably a lot better. Two, she says, I'm not sure people quite understand the positive impact of Alex Cooper and call her daddy on young women. I highly recommend doing some research on this if you haven't. With that being said, if we want female athletes to get paid the same as male athletes, there needs to be ad dollars put into it. So, with the Olympics bringing in Alex Cooper to commentate, having a Skims USA Olympic team clothing line, Love Shack Fancy did a collab with gymnast Sunisa Lee. All these things are bringing in a female audience member, something that is so needed for female sports. It's quite a genius marketing angle by Team USA and the Olympics. I'm so happy to see them leaning into ways to communicate to female audiences. I love this paragraph. And yeah, hell yeah. I mean, that's great. And by the way, the Olympics, and especially what I've watched this week, I mean, I can't speak as a female, obviously, but my God, it's got to be so inspiring for females. Just watch that female gymnastics team or the female rugby team. I mean, just so many amazing stories. And yes, if Alex Cooper is this kind of person that has this positive impact on women, then hell yeah, it's great to have her up there. Now, I can't speak to the positive impact that she brings. I can just speak to, I'm even aware of her popularity. But I was kind of just like, I don't get it, which can be, completely ignorant on my part. I totally accept that. Let's see here. Some comments in this. She says, I agree with all of this. Also, the girl has been busy, all the Love Island prep she has to do, and then going right into the Olympics. I'll give her some grace for not being on her A game here. She must be exhausted, and live coverage is scary. We all suck when doing something new. I commend her for taking the opportunity. I agree with that. I guess I just sometimes want. Listen, I'm curious. I'll watch another episode this week, and I'm sure it's much different, and I'm sure there is a lot of fear involved. She always seems very confident and secure in herself, which I'm sure is not the case because we all mask things and we all fake it until we make it, or a lot of us try to. And also, I do also want to point out she probably has a team of people around her. It's not her just coming up with the questions herself, her picking out the guests. When you are at this kind of level, you have a whole team of people helping you with this show. She is the figurehead, and probably what she says goes, but there is a team of people, as well as with her podcast, that help her with all of this stuff. The same thing with Nick's podcast. The same thing with, there is a team of people that help. I mean, it takes a village, right? Um, let's see. But then I this was another kind of point of view that I think is interesting to talk about, because as much positivity as there is around Alex Cooper, there's also a lot of people that really still kind of are potentially upset with her or get bad vibes from her just because of all of that Sophia and how it went down. I always hear a lot of things where Sophia was the stronger interviewer, and that interviewing has never been Alex's strong suit. But like, listen, at this point, it must be because she's had so many like at bats. She has so many hours of practice. So I'm sure she keeps getting better and better. But a lot of people, from what I've read and what I've been told from friends, this is just, is that she has also potentially stepped and walked over people, even high school friends to get her to the top. Um, and that she didn't come up with the call her daddy jokes when it was her and Sophia. She doesn't come up with her own stuff. So this is some of the other side of people saying that. And there's a long history of people that have been with Call Her Daddy from the beginning that might just be learning about Alex Cooper now. Like she is only becoming like my purview in the last year and a half. Like I knew the Call Her Daddy drama, but I never really focused on the podcast because it wasn't for me. Um, and also people still talk about like the Barstool merch that was made against Sophia, the bullying itself, and all of this. So I mean, it is something that I want to look into more because I think it is a fascinating story. I would love to talk to Sophia at some point, not even about Alex, because but I would just be so curious what she's all about. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit, and I know you guys have your own takes on this. And it seems like a lot of people have overwhelmingly positive things to say about her. So I want to point that out. Like, above all, it seems like, and listen, it's like I say with anything, who the F cares what I think? Who the F cares? I mean, like the proof is in the pudding. I mean, $100 million deal, a $60 million deal, doing a show at the Olympics. It does not get better than that. I mean, career highlight after career highlight. So you have to give somebody their due in this industry, especially as a woman, to be able to get to that level. That is insane. And I think anybody would be ridiculous if they didn't say, like, hats off for all of that. So I'm sure you guys will have your own take on this. I'm sure I'll get sent a lot of articles explaining more about this, but I wanted to clarify because I thought that post in the Facebook group was really interesting. I really like when people have differing opinions or say, hey, I know you were joking, but I did want to point out this. I love that. So, anyways, this was a little bit of a special one off episode about Jax and Alex. And I hope you guys have a great Wednesday, right? That's what it is, Wednesday. Bye, guys.